You could have the most magical Christmas of all time, but only football can ruin it the way it ruined it for me on Boxing Day. And this is one of those games that I had to fully watch again a second time to either confirm my initial suspicions or reevaluate my first impressions. And the good news is there were really only two big issues and one big moment that defined this game. That doesn't give me any comfort, it doesn't give me any joy, and it doesn't take away the pain of Manchester United 3, Aston Villa 2. Welcome inside the parlor. I have always been somebody who seeks the truth and tries to report on that. I love getting to the core of issues and problems, particularly in football. And I vowed on this show to always try and be rational over emotional, even though a lot of sports fans want you to be wound up and angry and frustrated, because then that validates their own anger and frustration. It's the old misery loves company scenario. And make no mistake, I was angry on Boxing Day because my foul mood kind of ruined everybody's holiday in this house. And the best thing that could have happened to me was getting the entire Welcome to Wrexham series, which my missus and I binged watched for hours that night. It was like having sips of fine wine in between bites of stinky cheese. And in this scenario, the Villa loss at Manchester United was the stinky cheese. And watching that show made me realize how damn lucky we are to be supporting Aston Villa at this time in its history, and that we should never ever forget that or take it for granted. Because obviously it sucks losing a game where you have a 2-0 lead, especially in a season where Villa hasn't dropped a single point when scoring first. And it's weird that we have but one win in our history on Boxing Day, a day which would be a great time to add more festive cheer in your life with 3 points. And above all, it sucks losing to a club like Manchester United, which is so easy to despise. It's a brand with tourist fans everywhere, in and outers. I have a guy down the street who has season tickets to Manchester United. But fair play to Erik ten Hag. He won the tactical battle on Boxing Day fair and square, and that's 3 in a row now, frankly, against Unai Emery at home, where he's got the better of us. But still, if you asked any Manchester United fan right now, would you trade your ownership and structure sporting-wise for ours? They would take it in a heartbeat and probably bite your hand off, especially now that a 25% stakeholder has somehow managed to convince the Glazers that we're going to now run the sporting operations. Let's see how that works out. I can now welcome you officially to the Holy Trinity show, which explores the 3 big issues or moments that defined United 3, Villa 2, and senior correspondent Samir Gaby was on hand at Old Trafford, experiencing the highs and lows with Henson colleague Tony Lightwood and his son Louis, Henson on tour, if you will. And now you can own those gorgeous retro alternates that Samir has worn in the pictures we've shown on this show, but also that he's been teasing on social media. I've put the link in the description of this video, and people are coming up to Samir now because he's a celebrity, and they're getting their pictures taken with him, like Carter, for example. And I absolutely love that. Now, the key numbers are bizarre to me because in possession, XG, passing percentage, it just does not make sense. The reality of the situation as manifested in the key numbers simply does not add up. Villa never ever controlled this game. Not once. Not at 1-0, not at 2-0. They never controlled this game. And no stat tells a better story of what really happened tactically than the interceptions, which were so wide. They were 3-1 in favor of the Red Devils. because of what they did both in and out of possession. Just on that point with the numbers and why the possession stats seemed so similar, even though it never felt like Aston Villa had a grasp of this game. Under Erik ten Hag, it feels like both stylistically and philosophically, United wants to play with a really high tempo, especially at home. It's always like 1, 2, 3 passes, and then boom, you exploit the space, or you drive, or you accelerate the ball. Whereas Aston Villa wants to control the game with a series of passes. They'll happily make 16 sideways or backwards passes, sometimes pinning the ball and grinding the game to a dead stop in order to control the match and wait for those moments and those cues to accelerate through midfield and try to make something happen in the front third. Very different approaches, but as Unai Emery said afterwards, you really have to analyze and learn from losses and figure out why, for example, United seemed to control this game, whereas they had trouble against a team like Bournemouth. Very quick shout out to a couple of Villa fans with some Canadian ties, eh? Will and his dad, Alan James, sent me this photo featuring custom-made Holy Trinity show mugs, complete with the 24/7 logo. That's very flattering, although I don't remember signing any merchandising agreement or licensing arrangement with my team of very high-priced lawyers. Paul Handsaker, managing director of 24/7 Services, the fine sponsor of this show, was supposed to be at Old Trafford for this game, but gave his tickets away. So on one hand, we could blame Paul because he has a fantastic in-person record this year for not being there and helping Villa to see it through. But you could also say that he didn't have to suffer along with everybody else live and in person and then make that very depressing drive home from Manchester. While you and your family were hopefully reveling in the holidays, Paul had to always keep one eye on his cell phone because the emergencies and problems don't take the festive period off. And I simply cannot wait to share with you all the exciting things that are going to happen for 24/7 Services in the new year. But one thing that will not change is Paul and his team's commitment to you and quality work. That will never change, even during the holidays. Let's get straight to the top 3 because I'm just wasting your time if we don't otherwise. And the third big issue in this match was precision problems, which relates entirely to our front third play, which was, frankly, as rare as rocking horse. We had so few opportunities to even get into the front third, and I'll talk about that separate issue later. But on the rare occasion where we were managing to run forward in Manchester United's defensive third, the amount of times we had a ball pinched away at the critical moment, it was incredible. Now, some of that was down to our lack of precision. But I'm also going to give a lot of credit to 2 players in particular, that being Dalot and Wan-Bissaka, their fullbacks. I thought they had a good game just from the eyeball test. Statistically, they were 2 of the best 3 players of anybody on the field. And sometimes, those guys actually show you the pass by giving you the space and then immediately step in and take it away. Take nothing away from how Manchester United defended in open play in this game. We have seen so many occasions this season where Leon Bailey beats a fullback. He's so good, left and right foot. It's impossible to know when he's going to shift from one to the other. So he gets around guys, and he's able to play a dangerous ball that so many of his teammates have latched onto for important goals this season. We also know that Jacob Ramsey is fully capable of doing exactly the same thing on his side of the field. And I would say the same for Nicolo Zaniolo and Moussa Diaby, of course, but they simply had no joy against United's fullbacks in this game. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but one of the problems with Ezri Konsa playing the widest of the right defenders, I'm not calling him a fullback necessarily, but is that he offers no overlapping support the way a Matt Cash would. I had to chuckle at all the people that were moaning and whining and whinging and complaining and even retroactively blaming the loss on Unai Emery because he didn't make substitutions soon enough, which I think is utterly laughable and ridiculous and had no bearing on the result and was not an issue in this game. Do you know why? because not a single person in that dugout was capable of changing the foundational problems we were having of getting in behind United's fullbacks and getting penetration in the box. I was disappointed when Leon Bailey was dragged because he still seemed like the biggest and only threat to get in behind and cause problems. I assume that him being dragged had to do with him being preserved somewhat for Burnley, because right now he is our most dangerous attacking player. Jacob Ramsey's going through a tough time. We all know that, and that stands to reason. He's coming off a major injury, and he's just getting back up to speed. And Moussa Diaby is having his first difficult patch in his Villa career. He's now realizing, maybe I don't have the tools to be a number 10 type in this league right now, and that the Premier League is miles ahead of the Bundesliga in terms of demands. I believe both of those players are going to come out of these patches, and they'll do so with flying colors at some point. I also like how he's played of late, but I don't think Nicolo Zaniolo would have come on and changed the problems that we were having right now. Same with John Duran. Nor could the available substitutes address the second biggest issue in this match, which was tactical and which was employed precisely because of the two gaping holes in Aston Villa's starting 11. It is no coincidence to me that Villa have only collected one of an available 6 points from the first two festive outings, with Pau Torres and Boubacar Kamara unavailable. Torres was in the squad for this game, but Clement Lenglet got the start again, as these exit rumors are swirling around him. And I'm not suggesting that Unai Emery played Lenglet to appease Barcelona or him with the lack of playing time, but I do wonder how close Pau is if he was able to be in the 18. And Leander Dendoncker, another player who is rumored to be exiting in January, was preferred to John McGinn in the double pivot role in this game, and I guess he was somewhat justified in that decision when Dendoncker scored his first goal for Aston Villa to make it 2-0. But you wonder how much debate there was over how we're going to set up. Should we put John McGinn back in that role as a deeper lying midfielder with, say, a Diaby or a Zaniolo as the number 10? However, the drop-off from options A, Torres and Kamara, to options B, Lenglet and Dendoncker are, I'm sorry, and with the greatest of respect, so bloody wide. Pau Torres at this point of the season has progressed the ball farther than any other Premier League player. Can you believe that? I find that an incredible stat. If he's not beating the first guy and carrying it, well, then he has his passing range. He could play the smart and accurate ball into midfield, or he can bypass the midfield altogether and play a long penetrating ball, which is probably what we needed in this game more of, the long diagonal balls. I mean, our whole system is kind of built around Pau Torres. He's our quarterback, and that's why he was the number one target for Unai Emery in the summer. Boubacar Kamara is able to do the exact same thing, sometimes higher up the field, sometimes he drops in between center backs and almost plays as a center back, but he is able to make himself available all over that neutral area, take the ball, turn with it, evade the press, connect with his teammates. He is a vitally important player to us and an ever-present when he is available. And I guess you could say that the Villa Park consecutive win streak with Torres and Boubacar Kamara is still on. But the absence of Torres and Kamara absolutely leads to big issue number 2, and that is pressing problems. If you're Erik ten Hag, and I rate him, by the way, despite everything that's happening right now and the fact he probably doesn't have the squad that he wants and all the rumors you hear about a disconnect and a mutiny by the players, did that look like a team that was disconnected from its manager? Not to me. And so if you're looking at this Aston Villa team as Erik ten Hag, you are saying there's 2 giant holes in that squad. We're going right after that with our tactical approach, and we're going to send 5 and sometimes 6 and sometimes even 7 players, and we're going to press them hard and high in that space inside Aston Villa's half of the field. In fact, it's a channel that's only about 15 to 20 yards deep. And sometimes fullbacks would join, and sometimes central midfielders would join. It was suffocating for Villa. And one way or another, either we didn't have a player available, or we didn't have a precise pass, or give some credit to the home side. They just had more hunger and better anticipation than we did, which speaks again to the interceptions number, 20-7 in favor of the Red Devils. And here again, and I repeat, there was not a single player in that dugout to help us solve that specific issue. Defensive third into midfield, midfield into the front third. And that includes Big Tim, as much as it was nice to see the big lad. And by the way, are we showcasing him for some kind of January move or loan to maybe free up some funds for somebody else? Because this would have been a sobering signal for Monchi and his recruitment team that when our primary guys like Torres and Kamara are out, it is a long way down to options B and C, and that has to be addressed. And this is why it's a tough situation with Clement Longley, because we don't know how long until Tyrone Mings is truly available and ready, and therefore it might be a good idea to hang on to him, but he is not starting over Pau Torres. Compounding those two aforementioned huge absences was the inconvenient and unfortunate truth that Douglas Luiz might have had his most ineffective game since Unai Emery arrived. I mean, statistically, he was the worst player out of 22 starters on the field. This is just statistically. And again, I had to watch this game twice to understand, well, what was going on here? And part of the plan would have been to suffocate Douglas Luiz out of the game, because we all know he has the technical ability to wriggle out of things at times. So you clear him out, give the ball to Leander Dendoncker then. That's fine. We'll have Leander Dendoncker on the ball. And you know what? It worked. But after looking at it again, there were times when I'm wondering, could Douglas Luiz have worked harder to earn that extra yard of space or create space for somebody else even? And I'm sure, and I hope, this is just a one-off for Dougie, because it is a demanding run of games for a guy playing in that position. But this issue was huge in the game, and it beautifully manifested itself just prior to the game's biggest and most important moment. And that was the 1-2 goal. I'm pretty sure I know exactly what was discussed in each respective dressing room at halftime. Unai Emery would have said, it's not really going all that great. But if we go out and aggressively get that third goal, this game is done and dusted. And if we can't do that, at the very least, can we try to control the game and keep that clean sheet and just keep a draw in the second half? Whereas Erik ten Hag would have said, keep going. It's working. We're suffocating them. They're turning the ball over. They're not creating chances in open play. And by the way, we've already come from 2 down to win a game at home this season. All we need is that first goal. We even dodged a very early second half bullet when Garnacho's goal was ruled offside by a toenail, which just goes to show how casual we came out in the second half. Villa had this "we got this" air. Oh, this team hasn't won in 4 games. They haven't scored in over 400 minutes. The fans are getting edgy. We got this. And you could see the gulf in urgency. It was a mile wide, even in the first half, I felt, but especially in that second half. And some coaches have this saying, it's straight out of the cliche cupboard. You're leading at halftime, you come out for the second half and you tell your team, let's take a 0-0 mentality. Let's win or draw this half and see it through. And we did not do that at all. I had friends who are United fans texting me at halftime saying, well, this is what it's like being a United fan right now, and it must be great being a Villa fan right now. And I'm like, we are not playing well. We have zero control of this game, and the team that scores next is going to win the game. I said it to my guests, and they looked at me, are you Nostradamus? And I'm like, no. I have seen this movie before. We all have. That's why it was so irritating. We didn't have the urgency that, say, Bournemouth had when they went out and they got that third goal to finish it off. Have a look at the still image of the moment just prior to the change of possession that leads to the 1-2 goal. This is one of the 20 interceptions I talked about in the key numbers. And everything about this photo is off for me. If Ezri Konsa gets this ball here, he's going to be closed down right away. If he drops 10 yards, at least he gives himself some time. John McGinn's not an option here. It looks almost like he's hiding. I mean, he's tucked between two opponents. If he gets it, he's going to be swarmed right away. Clement Longley is not an option. He needs to drop 10 yards. That's what Pau Torres would do. And most importantly of all, Douglas Luiz at this moment in time is not an available option. So what is on for Diego Carlos here? Should he just go long and play it in behind United's backline? At least then when they recover the ball, if they do, they're 75 yards from our goal and there are 11 bodies between the ball and our goal. But that simply isn't in our DNA. And when this moment goes live, Bruno Fernandes is just more alive to this through ball than Douglas Luiz, and frankly, it's not a great ball. And this is the second time in consecutive away games that Diego Carlos plays a poor ball that is pinched and turns into the home team's first goal. So when you review that picture again, can you pin all the blame of that goal on a Diego Carlos sloppy pass? You know what? I don't think you can. I don't think that's fair. There were not a lot of good options there. Somebody needed to drop in, be available, or drag somebody else around to open a channel up, win the ball, try to turn, maybe earn a foul. None of those things happened, and that scene repeated itself again and again and again. And that's why big issue number 2, the pressing of Man United, was so critical in this game. And even if you did get through that press, our forwards were not doing anything with the ball upfield. Maybe that's why Diego Carlos was reluctant to play a 40-yard diagonal ball in behind a fullback for one of our wingers to chase onto, because he's more than capable of doing that. And we need to fix this, by the way, because other teams aren't stupid. They'll look at this and they'll go, well, that's another way you can go get Villa. You could sit in a low block, or you can go and press them really high and hard. It is risky, but we've got to learn how to navigate that particular approach against us. I simply cannot believe that Unai Emery is going to suddenly just tear up the plan, abandon his principles and his ideas, and in this same situation say, let's just drop into a low block and see if United can break us down, around, over, or through us, or let's start just going long ball, straight from the back line to the forwards every single time. And you know why? It's because we're in third place right now and have just come off the greatest calendar year in club history because we stuck to those principles. Oh, and by the way, Nottingham Forest earlier this season tried to play in a low block at Old Trafford, hanging on to a 2-0 lead, and they succumbed 3-2 as well. So to summarize, this had absolutely nothing to do with substitutions or the timing of substitutions. This, in combination with Sheffield United, proves that we must address our squad depth so that we have better options available to us to deal with circumstances like this. To Manchester United, Aston Villa was kind of like that Christmas present that got lost under the tree behind the curtain somehow, and United opened it and it turned out to be exactly what they wanted. Our away record suffers again, and that will continue to be scrutinized until we become more consistent. United was not a top 6 side coming in. I'm not sure if they really are, but let's see if the lack of European football helps them somehow. And despite scoring the first 2 goals, we lost, and in the process took a big hit in our second half plus minus. We did improve slightly on set pieces. We scored 2, but crucially conceded 1, naturally from the player who had yet to score in the Premier League, of course. Speaking of Boxing Day, how do you like my Villa 3rd match day top, which I received for Christmas, along with some other very nice garments that I'll be showing off in coming shows? This is an XL, which is perfect, even for me, a fat guy. And if you'd like one, I've put a link in the description below. Obviously, there are huge Boxing Week sales happening at the Villa online store right now in case you didn't get everything you wanted for Christmas, or you can't make it down to Villa Park and the big store there in time. Speaking of Villa Park and Burnley's arrival, Vincent Kompany's men will be gutted about losing to Liverpool the last time out. They conceded very early in that game, but otherwise, put together a pretty valiant effort at Turf Moor, and I fear that this game, like Sheffield United, will not be as straightforward as everybody else thinks it will be based on the paper predictions. And now that other teams have had a chance to look at Villa and look at some of the absences in their team, maybe they'll try to pull off some of the same systems that both Manchester United and Sheffield United were successful with. And this is where Pau Torres' fitness and availability will be a key issue as we officially head into the second half of the season, which is hard to believe. I had said on a previous show that your festive fixtures and results could heavily impact where you want to be, and where Villa wants to be is in this beautiful neighborhood that they're currently just driving through. Well, they want to stay and live there. And I don't even know if the most negative Villa fans would have anticipated that the best we could have collected out of these 3 festive games was 4 out of 9 points. But I anticipate a complicated and difficult outing on the 30th, because now teams have 2 playbooks that they can employ to try to stifle Villa at home. One of them being, a high and hard press, but I think Vincent Kompany is more likely to engage with the low block, which we had a tough time getting around against the Blades. I'm not going to be able to get the Burnley show out before the end of 2023 because I have so much going on, so I'm going to preemptively wish you and yours only the happiest, healthiest, and most prosperous year ahead in your life. And I'm not going to lie, I am so sad to see 2023 come to an end, because for me personally, it might have been the greatest year of my life. Here I am, a 54-year-old. And that was just an epic year, partially because of the trip to Birmingham and what happened in my life since then, but also because it was a record-breaking calendar year for a club with a long and glorious history. And for both, I am eternally grateful. Until Burnley and 2024, enjoy your New Year's revelry, and as always, up the mighty Villa!